Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with the long overdue top 10 rogue cards that I want to brew around from Kaladesh. Now this is an ongoing series for all you new subscribers to the channel. Of every set I give my top 10 list of cards that I want to personally brew around. So this is not a top 10 most powerful cards. This is not a top 10 most, I guess you would say most interesting cards, but interesting to me. So without further ado, that's kind of the format I'm going to use. I'm going to try to explain my reasoning, and I'm going to try to actually do some deck techs and some gameplay around the specific card. I think we did a pretty good job hitting most of them out of Eldritch Moon. But I'm going to try to hit all of these cards and try to build some standard decks or some modern decks, specifically using the cards that I'm going to mention in this video. Now again, a little bit of disclaimer to this. I had this top 10 list done weeks and weeks and weeks ago, right after the spoiler was finally finished, but with just how busy I've been, it's now just coming out, and I understand there's already been a Star City Open that was quite large that also has a few of these cards on the on those lists. So I apologize, that's not the reason why I picked them. I picked them for various reasons, but instead of explaining myself any further, we'll just talk about them as we get to them. So coming in at number 10 is the Whisper Weaver Angel. It is 4 and 2 white for a 4/4 flying, and when Whisper Weaver Angel enters the battlefield, you may exile another target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. Wizards must have forgot how badly things can be abused in Magic the Gathering, because with Restoration Angel it said non-angel, and even with a few other, like even with Avacyn, it had kind of that non-angel clause to it, because you just didn't want to having duplicates of this trigger what the angel is trying to do. So once again, we can go back and cast 2 Whisper Weaver Angels, or a Whisper Weaver Angel and a clone effect, or a Whisper Weaver Angel and something that actually just mimics the effect, and bounce them repeatedly, endlessly, over and over, creating that infinite loop. So anything like Perforos or Impact Tremors, or even Outpost Siege. Soul Sisters goes infinite life with 2 of them. There's plenty of combos, I'm sure, that just goes crazy with the ability for double into the battlefield effects just looping over and over again. So I thought that's interesting enough to try to brew a deck around to see if we can break the card. Now the 6 mana, no flash, it's just it's a really dumbed down version of Restoration Angel without the clause though. I mean, Restoration Angel can basically be broken with Kiki Jiki, but it couldn't be broken with things like Splinter Twin or another Restoration Angel, because they can't flicker themselves. So anywho, Whisper Weaver Angel can definitely flicker themselves. So I think that, again, it's worthwhile to try to find some busted standard combo. I don't think I'm looking to Modern, because there's easier ways to do that sort of thing in Modern. And that's why it hits my top 10 list, because I don't know if it's going to be able to happen, but it's interesting enough to talk about. Alrighty, on to my number 9. Number 9 used to rank up higher on my top 10 list. I swapped it back down. 2 of these cards coming up I swapped back down just because they were both heavily played in the Star City Open and they already have decks around them. But this was actually my favorite card coming out of the gates for the spoilers, which is Aetherworks Marvel. It just has a lot of potential. I'm like, man, this card is busted. There's going to be turn like 4 Emrakuls and turn 4 Ulamogs quite consistently if you have this in your hand. So it says whenever a permanent enters the battlefield under your control, you get an energy, and for 6 energy, you may look at the top 6 cards and cast a card from among it without paying its mana cost. Cast is the key word. Up until this point, all of the cards that were trying to cheat in the mana cost, like high mana cost cards, have not said cast. They've all said just put onto the battlefield. So reanimation strategies. So if you reanimate a card from the graveyard, say you try for Emrakul or Ulamog, then you just get the 13/13 body. You don't get the enter the battlefield trigger, or actually not the enter the battlefield trigger, the cast trigger off of the Eldrazi. And there's a few other cards like that. It was specifically Eldrazi's that all triggered on cast. Now the Marvel's the first one that actually casts it. So Eldritch Evolution didn't cast. Reanimation strategies didn't cast. What are some other ones that were in the format before? I know there was some that might have just rotated or still in, but none of them cast. And so this one has an entire deck. I believe it finished in the top 8 of the Star City Open, where you just try for as much energy as possible as well as trying to filter through your deck to find that Aetherworks Marvel. Throw it down, and then again you can get this out very, very quickly. And Emrakul, as soon as like turn 4, you have enough energy just to slop it. It doesn't enter the battlefield tap. You can use it immediately, and then you just hope that running 4 Ulamogs and 4 Emrakuls, I don't know, you could even throw in like a World Breaker or something else that has a pretty decent cast effect. Then you're gonna hit it with 6 cards. 6 cards. You're most likely, I mean, the odds are going to say that you're going to hit at least one of them. And that's all you need to hit on turn 4 to just plain win the game is like Emrakul or Ulamog. I mean, Emrakul is a 2-turn clock. Ulamog will get rid of 2 of their lands right when it comes out on turn 4. And that's game after that. It's going to be very, very hard for an opponent to come back. But again, there is a deck. Go check out the Star City Opens. And I believe it was a Teamer version that used the Aetherworks Marvel. And I think that's the right route to go because those are the colors that are the best at generating energy. On to number 8. Number 8 is a card that I've actually brewed around quite a lot already. I've made a standard deck out of it and just upgraded. You can go check that video out on my YouTube channel. I've upgraded the Prized Amalgam deck to now use Scrap Heat Scrounger. It's just value, value, value. It's another easy activation for 2 mana to exile a creature card from your graveyard and then return back the Scrounger and all Prized Amalgams that are with it. So this also saw a ton of play on the Star City Opens just because apparently a 2 mana for a 3/2 card is insanely powerful in decks that either the red is using the 1-drop that becomes a Curd Ape, or the white is using the 1-drop that almost becomes a Wild Nacatl and then has Metalcraft with First Strike. So both those cards have insane synergy on turn 1 into a turn 2 Scrap Heap Scrounger. There's also the Scrap Heap Scrounger can crew any vehicle at the 3. It actually crews the Skyship. The Skyship has crew 3. And so a lot of these decks are just, the vehicles came out really, really strong at the Star City Open, and the Scrounger was basically a 4 of in all of those, which is very confusing. The Chopper went crazy in price and was almost in, the Scrounger was almost in as many decks as the Chopper was. So I think the Scrappy Scrounger actually has a lot of even Eternal playability in like dredge type decks. I'm not sure that it necessarily wants to be in those type of decks, but it really works with Prized Amalgam right now in Standard. And there was a deck that actually took second with the Scrounger instead of going green like I traditionally go with Prized Amalgam, they went red and then used cards like Insolent Neonaut, which has insane synergy with Scrap Heap because you're going to have a 1-drop in the graveyard, and for the Scrap Heap Scrounger then exile it to bring it back. So you can even discard it with the Neonaut and then rely on getting it back quite easily because you don't care about the Neonaut in the graveyard at that point. And it also runs the Prized Amalgams in the Tormenting Voice and Cathartic Reunion, so both of those are incredibly good at filling up the graveyard and aren't as random as green, just getting things off the top of the library. It's actually getting things from hand into the graveyard, which is sometimes the problem with the traditional Prized Amalgam route. So I think that there's a lot more potential with this card right now. It's just being stuck in every deck just because it's a very, very aggressive card. But I think that the metagame will change quite soon. I think aggro strategies will start to get... Radiant Flames is still a thing, which I think is pretty good about shutting down these aggro strategies. On to number 7. Number 7 is a very interesting card to brew around. It's a blue do-nothing card until you get it out, and then all of your control cards then become your finishers. This is Metallurgic Summonings. Metallurgic Summoning is 5 mana for an enchantment. When you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you create an XX colorless constructed artifact creature token where X is the spell's converted mana cost. This is really, really good for like bounce type strategies. It's okay for the counter spells. It's actually pretty good with counter spells, but usually you're burning counter spells before Metallurgic Summonings comes out. I like this card with more like bounce value, so things that you actually return and get some value out of it. And eventually, once it gets, even brings the cool thing about Metallurgic Summonings, though, is people already pointed out that it works really well with the take an extra turn after this one, because you get to create a 6/6 off of the take an extra turn, and that's usually what you have to do if you want to kick it, or what is the one they use right now? Isn't it the take an extra turn is Surge, I think. One of them. Anyway, one of the take an extra turns. Oh no, Awaken. That's what it is. Yeah, Awaken is the Metallurgic Summoning just gets away from the Awaken, and plus anything else you cast, like say any sort of your ramp spells, and then Nissa's Nissa's the look for 3 lands, get 7 life, and it costs 6 mana. That, for example, is a you get a 6/6 out after that, and a bunch of life and lands off the Metallurgic Summoners. So I think that this goes best. All the like the black blue control, white blue control, green blue ramp has a shell for the Metallurgic Summoners. It's just about a time where I think people are going to try it out. It gets a lot better now that Dromoka's Command is out of the format too. There's not a ton of enchantment hate that people are running because everyone's going to be very, very focused on dealing with artifacts. The coolest thing about Metallurgic Summonings too is then once you get enough constructs out and you've basically made your army, you can then exile the Metallurgic Summonings to return all instant sorcery cards from your graveyard back to your hand. You can only do it if you control 6 or more artifacts, but again, you've been making those colorless construct artifacts, and you should be able to do that. And then you will have all of those bounce spells or control spells back to then clear the board for your 6/6s to, or your 5, even your 1/1s or 2/2s if you've been casting value creatures to just swing in for lethal. On to the next card, which is another blue card, is Paradoxical Outcome. This is kind of a challenge for me to try to figure out what this can go in. This just is begging to be broken in any sort of like artifact value eggs type shell. Return any number of target non-land, non-token permanents you control their owner's hands. Draw a card for each card returned to your hand this way. So I'm thinking about like a lot of the 0 drops that draw you a card, and or just reducing the cost of them with something like there's the new one out of, there's Cloud Key, there is the Ethereum Sculptor, and there's one that's new out of this set that reduces the mana cost of colorless spells by 1. And so there's tons of those old eggs type cards that they enter the battlefield, you draw a card, and like Prophetic Prism, for example. And so you just get a ton of value off of them, and then Paradoxical Outcome basically just doubles that, gives you a ton more draws, and then you can recast them all. So even in Standard, this looks pretty good. There's the Fireweaver that gets a damage each time an artifact comes into play. I don't know if there's quite enough artifacts to justify running the Paradoxical Outcome. There's some that add energy when they come into play that you usually get the value off of cracking them again, but the outcome at least can get the 1 value and then return them and get more value. And then something just like Reckless Fireweaver that's doing a damage each time, it might work. But it just seems like a really, really cool ability. I like these type of cards because it's exactly what I look for when I try to do brew decks, is try to find these like interesting decks that may not have like a tier 1 home, and try to find a very good strategy to brew around them. And this fits the bill in all all the definition. Speaking of Reckless Fireweaver, that is my number 5. Reckless Fireweaver seems really cool in Pauper, and also it does seem like it can be busted with clues in Standard. I think a lot of people just really forget that clues are still a thing with all these cards that want to deal with artifacts. So the Reckless Fireweaver is a 1/3 for 2 mana, so right there it's going to be able to block the 2/1s and the 2/2s and stay alive. And then whenever an artifact enters the battlefield, deals a damage to each opponent. So again, eggs type strategies in Modern, it could see play, or even better in Pauper, that already is an affinity type strategy. Reckless Fireweaver could definitely go in that, where you're just casting a bunch of early or cantrippy or early type artifact creatures or cards, and then doing the damage off each of one. If you have 2 of them out, I'm pretty sure that you're going to be able to do enough. That's only 10 artifacts you need to put out to just win the game. So I think that a blue-red artifacts deck is definitely plausible, or a green-red clue deck is definitely plausible with the Reckless Fireweaver, and it'll be short time, like Tyler's Tracker in this. You just got to play like a heavy control with the red and green. Run Tyler's Tracker, run Reckless Fireweaver, and I'm trying to think of some other, the clue generators. Run those, and I think that you're good to go with enough damage. Each one of those clues actually doing a damage, drawing a card, and insane value off the Reckless Fireweaver. So I definitely want to try the clue deck, the Tireless Tracker Reckless Fireweaver. So look for that upcoming brew within the next few weeks. Number 4. Number 4 is probably my second favorite card actually by design out of this set. I pushed it back just because I've got some cool combinations for 2 and 3, and then number 1 is just like a card that I think is just my favorite, my first card I really want to tackle. And actually my number 1 card is going to be a contest for this month as well. So I'll talk about, that's why Rashmi is not the number 1 slot. Originally was, because I just am in love with this ability. Whenever you cast your first spell each turn, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card with converted mana cost less than that spell, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. If you don't, you put the revealed card back into your hand. So it's almost like they had one of these in Zendikar, right? The one that whenever you cast your first, or whenever you cast your second spell, you draw a card. This is just like a better. It is one more mana, but it's a 2/3 body for 4 mana. But every first spell, if this guy can stick, every first spell, it means on your turn and let's see, yeah, on each turn or your opponent's turn or commander. In anyone's turn, too bad Prophet's banned Commander. This is another card that'd be busted with it. This would, yeah, it just goes crazy with card advantage. And it has the Cascade ability, but if it doesn't hit, well, not quite Cascade. I mean, it puts it in a play if it's less. But if it doesn't hit, you just draw a card. I mean, there's so many things. Again, I like this with these like cantrip type, bounce type spells or lockdown type spells, and eventually you're going to draw a ton of, speaking of the Metallurgic Summonings, I think this is perfect for it, because it's going to continue to fill back up your hand. You cast one spell after that the following turn, and you've got the value back off of Rashmi. You cast two, you're net up. And for 4 mana, that's incredibly, that is just the definition of value. So I'm going to be trying to do a commander deck, I'm sure, with Rashmi. It just seems beyond busted with commander. Don't know if it's going to be quite playable in any other Eternal format, but in Standard I definitely think that there's some room for this if we can shut down the aggro. Kind of funny, we went from a more of a mid-range collected company based mid-range-ish aggro-ish sort of aggro set to where the 1 and 2 drop aggro strategies were, unless they were called humans, they did not see the light of day, and now we've run into a format that is incredibly aggro and might make it so Rashmi does not be able to see any sort of play. But I love the card. I think that it's worth brewing around in Standard, and we're going to try to make it happen. On to number 3 and 2. These are both cards that I would not consider, like, the only reason they're on here is they're together. And they go with another card, which is called Intervention Pack, which is already spiked beyond spiked. It was a bulk rare, or almost close to a bulk rare. And then it's gone up to just an insane price tag because of Madcap Experiment. Madcap Experiment says reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an artifact. Put that card on the battlefield and the rest on the bottom. And then it deals damage to you equal to the number of cards revealed this way. So Madcap Experiment of Intervention Pack, you basically make it so that it does not deal any damage to you. In fact, you gain all that life. So a lot of people in Modern are looking at like Blightsteel Colossus and the 8/8 your life total can't change, the Platinum Angel, just a lot of these like bigger artifact cards to cheat into play. So basically you're only going to run, the only artifacts you're going to run in your deck is the one you want to hit off Madcap Experiment. Wally, who does the community management for the Rogue Deck Builder, actually came up with this combo with Intervention Pack, which is Aetherflux Reservoir. So Aetherflux Reservoir with Madcap Experiment and Intervention Pack is you're going to gain all of that life off the Madcap Experiment, and then you're going to hit Aetherflux, and there is absolutely no like tap or wait or anything. You just have to pay 50 life, and it deals 50 damage to our creature or player. So Intervention Pack and Madcap, most likely if you go through 30 cards of your deck, will get you up to that 50 life total. Now you might have to play some other ways to get up to the 50 life total, but I'm thinking that it's like cards like See Beyond, or just scrying. What you want to do is you want to find that Aetherflux Reservoir and put it on the bottom of your library. There might be some ways in Modern to cheat that out. I haven't looked too clearly into it, but I think blue scry is the way to go and make sure this guy's on the bottom. Then with your Madcap Experiment, you go ahead and use it, and it's going to go through your entire deck. You're going to gain more than the 30 allotted life. You're going to gain like more like 50. And 45 to 50 life, and then as soon as this hits the battlefield, you pay 50 life and kill your opponent. So that's kind of the combo with Aetherflux Reservoir. Blightsteel Colossus and those type of cards are probably a better route to go. I've seen Madcap with Nahiri, because Nahiri can go get Blightsteel Colossus too. So it's basically Blightsteel has to be answered immediately, or it just wins the game with 11/11 Trample Infect. And so with Nahiri, that's an easy target other than Emrakul. It's also got indestructible, so still be pathed, I believe. But I mean, it's solid that there's two ways to find it now. If it's the only card in your deck, or you just play multiple copies of it, then the Madcap doesn't really dish off that much damage. Modern has a lot of other prevent all damage from a source of your choice, which is crazy with Madcap because it is damage, not loss of life. So it's just really, really open to be abused, especially when paired with white. So I'm looking forward to trying this Aetherflux Reservoir / Madcap Experiment combo in Modern especially. I don't quite think it's going to work in Standard unless we can figure out if there's a way to prevent damage from a source you control. I think there's a couple of them in Standard that prevent damage from sources you don't control. I'll have to look into that. But it's definitely something that I think we actually do have, like, Anticipate and decent little scry abilities to put the Aetherflux Reservoir on the bottom as well. So, anywho, that is the top 9. Now, drumroll please for the number 1, which is also going to be the contest for this week or this month's Twitter for hashtag RDBBrew. So if you haven't followed me on Twitter, I highly suggest you go follow me on Twitter. We do contests, and I give off some little bit of snippets here and there. Some of them are a little ranty about community issues, but for the most part, I just talk about Magic on Twitter. And what we do is an ongoing contest. Last month's contest was Marchesa the Black Rose. I'm going to do a video for that out shortly, and the one before that was Soulfire Grandmaster. So for this one, you will win 4 copies of my number 1 card in the foil variety, which is Night Market Lookout. Night Market Lookout is a 1/1 for 1. I had 4 of these in a draft, and oh my god, was this card insane all night in draft. So it's Pulse Tracker with an upside. Whenever Night Market Lookout becomes tapped, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So that means when it attacks, it's a 2/1 basically for 1 mana. Very similar to Pulse Tracker, because that's exactly what I believe it's Pulse Tracker. When it attacks, it deals 1 damage to opponent, or opponent loses a life. Yeah, so this trigger happens immediately. What I really like about Night Market Lookout is its ability to crew. So at the first turn you can attack in for 2, and then I had a Chopper and a Night Market Lookout combo in my draft deck, and it was insane all night. Just dropping down Night Market, attacking in for, and then turn 2 putting in a Chopper, attacking in for 2, and then turn number 3 just crewing the Chopper, doing a damage right off the bat, and then attacking you with a 3/3 flyer. So I really, really, really like this card. I think that it has some pretty stupid combos that I'm sure out there with like cards like Paradise Mantle or even Springleaf Drum as a way to tap it to generate mana. Where I'm really looking for this card in Standard is with Cryptolith Rite and Loam Dryad. So both Cryptolith Rite and Loam Dryad give this a tap ability, which is relevant, which is ramping. So I think that Night Market Lookout, Loam Dryad, Cryptolith Rite, and some of the, like the Fabricate 2 guy especially out of green, and then all the Eldrazi you still get like Catacomb Sifter from green-black. I think that archetype is alive and well, and I actually think that it will do very well against these Chopper decks, because you do have, one of the very good thing about Zulaport Cutthroat based Sacrifice decks is they were extremely good about clogging up the board and extremely good at gaining life back and getting that Westvale Abbey off. There wasn't a lot of ways that I saw those Chopper decks had to deal with Westvale Abbey, and I think that if you're really worried about a very inbred metagame that just runs Chopper, 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 I think that that's a great archetype to look into, because the Night Market Lookout can actually, at the very first, start to trade blows, and then you have cards that, and Blister Pod you could put in that kind of category. And I'm sure there's plenty of other cards that will just start, like Catacomb Sifter is putting out a 2/3 and a 1/1, and even like Ishkanah at that point, if you can try to get Delirium with Cryptolith Rite, can easily be ramped out. You have Big Pig that can be the finisher, the Decimator Provinces, or just rely on Westvale Abbey and Zulaport Cutthroats. Now we don't have like a specific Nantuko Husk type card that can sack everything. But I think that, I bet if we looked hard enough, there is a decent little sack outlet in the format. I mean, there is Sacrifice a Creature, put a 1/1 counter on all vampires. Yeah, probably doesn't quite get there. But I'm sure that we could find some sack outlets that are viable. And the Cryptolith Rite doesn't have the Collected Company to really cheat it out, and it doesn't have Evolutionary Leap either, but it does have some other cool cards like Eldritch Evolution that you can kill like a Catacomb Sifter possibly to go find, you know, a 5-drop. I think that this archetype is very alive, very well, and it's just positioned to take on those chopper decks in Standard. But then even with Night, I think just Night Market Lookout was the perfect card because great in Standard, great in Draft, possibly broken in Modern with cards like the Paradise Mantle, for example, that gives it a tap ability. And then anything that can untap it, there you have it. A Night Market Lookout, Jeskai Ascendancy, and Cryptoth Rite, for example, in Modern is infinite if you have spells to continue to cast anyway. And it probably should do enough damage. I mean, you'd have to go through 20 cards, but as soon as you get like another Night Market Lookout or something, then I'm sure there'd be a way to make that happen. And then in Pauper, it just seems incredibly good too, because a lot of the cards I've mentioned, a lot of those are like they give abilities, are actually in the common, and they actually do have kind of archetypes in Pauper. But in Pauper, this is just another rogue. I've been trying to get rogues to work in Pauper for quite a while, and I think this is the best one so far. That actually uses the tribal. The thing with, you get Prowl out of Pauper, and Prowl is incredibly powerful. It also has a 3 damage, 3 life type strategy, and I think that we could go all in on this type of strategy in Pauper. So there you have it, my top 10 list that I want to brew around. Again, this is not the most popular cards, or this is not the most powerful cards, or this is not necessarily the most interesting cards in Modern. This is just my personal list. If you have a personal list for your top 10 cards in Kaladesh, be sure to put that in the comments section below. As always, I appreciate everyone and the new subscribers. Thanks for watching.